Um, I'm talking to Daile, which is who is serving as a member of Australian Parliament representing the district of Fowler. She is also a Vietnamese refugee to Australia, which fascinates me, which is why I'm inviting her to talk on this podcast. Miss Daile, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, thank you. Chung, is that right? Chung is how
Sure.
I
Yes.
pronounce the name.
Sure.
Chung, yes. It's great to be on your show.
Yes, it's wonderful. I'm glad we can connect. Uh, So, as I've mentioned, I got to know you through Prime Minister Tony Abbott. He made a visit to Budapest, as he does a few times throughout the year, and he mentioned you by name, and that you work with him.
Wow.
So, yeah, tell me about working for him.
Well, I have not worked for Tony. My sister did. So it's not me who worked with Tony, but he I think I we have crossed paths many times. He was the opposition leader when I was, navigating my way through politics. Um, and we have, like I said, we've met on a few occasions. So, yeah.
That's it. Well, I should also like to congratulate you for on winning this year's federal election.
Yes, so it's very humbling to get re-elected this term. The election has just passed, which was in May 2025, and it was a very hard-fought battle. I'm in an area that was historically known as a Labor seat. I don't know if you're familiar with the two-party system that we have in Australia.
Yes, the coalition and the labor and everything.
That's right. So this seat, the seat of Fowler, have been historically been a Labor seat. It has not won by any other major party, let alone an independent. But I won this seat in May 2022, the first ever independent to have won the seat, as well as the first woman of refugee background to have won the seat in May 2022. And a few commentators have said that I was at the right place at the right time. And it has always been a Labor seat, so it'll go back to Labor this term. And so in May 2025, when we went to the election, um, there was certain group of people believing that they will win back the seat for Labor, but I held it, and there was a swing towards me, despite the Labor Party nominating a candidate with the exact surname as me, short name as well, like mine, and with the obviously intention to confuse the voters in this very multicultural electorate of Fowler. 70% of our uh, population are born overseas and have either one parent or two parents born overseas, and large proportion of people from refugee backgrounds from Vietnam, from Iraq, from Middle East, from other parts of the country who've escaped war torn, their conflict, birth countries to come and settle here in Australia. So Fowler is one of the most multicultural and multi-faith electorate in the country in Australia. And so in May 2025, when I got re-elected at a time whereby there was a huge swing towards Labor, I still maintained this as an independent seat with a swing towards me, which was quite, to me, it showed that the people were ready for a change. Secondly, I believe that our office and my team and myself have worked hard to engage with the community, so therefore they placed their trust in us, and I got re-elected.
Right. Yeah, that is wonderful. Again, once again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. So, why did you run as an independent?
Uh, I just, I mean, I was formerly a member of the Liberal Party, and I believe very much in freedom of choice, freedom of the individual to chart their own lives. I suppose relating back to my own life, arriving here as a daughter of a refugee mother, we rebuilt our lives, and we really did it independently. So I think that spirit of independence has always been in me. But I was part of the Liberal Party just for a few years, not long enough to be known as a liberal at heart. It's just about yeah. I then got expelled from the Liberal Party because I was so independent. I wanted to do certain things, and I have remained independent since 2012. And I continue to run. I got elected as an independent councillor on our local council, which is the first tier of local government in Australia. We've got 3 tiers, so I got elected as an independent councillor, and I just find it's quite liberating not to be aligned to a major party, because I've seen how parties can really put a lot of structure, put a lot of box people in being part of a party, and you really can't fight for the issues and the people that you want to represent. So for me, independence kind of allows me to speak my mind and speak for the community and speak about the community without having to tie back constantly to party politics and party, the party kind of, they put out it's like an agenda. So there's a party agenda, what the issues they're going to focus on and fight on. Being an independent, you don't have to be tied to that, but you look at the issues that are pertinent, that are important, that are critical, that are important for the community that you're trying to represent.
Okay. Yeah. So what issues are important to you right now that the Liberal Party does not support or include as part of the agenda?
Oh, look, I think major parties have their own ideological leanings, and they focus on those ideological issues rather than what are the issues that we need to address in order to, set the country forward in a way, and allow communities like Fowler to thrive and to be productive. For me, I have been focusing on the cost of living since my election in 2022. I have called on the government to reduce tax, for those that are middle class. I've called for the government to reduce the HECS indexation, which is a HECS debt that a lot of students pay to go to university here, and they accrue a debt and that's index, and I call the indexation to be reduced, both of which the government actually did, and made that their own policies, which is fantastic. So a lot of the times, people living in Western Sydney, where I'm based, I don't know if you're familiar with this area, we don't have the proper public transport infrastructure. We don't have the proper public resources for our schools. We don't have proper investment in our small business to manufacturing companies here, who are, I think, the engine of our state and the engine of our economy. So I feel that we are treated like second-class citizens often, because there are so many migrants and so many people from non-English speaking backgrounds living out here. So the government of the day, no matter who's in power, are taking advantage of that and think, well, these people aren't going to really demand that much. They'll vote for us anyway. So if we don't do anything, it's okay. Let's focus on our target seats, the seat that we want to win, that will form government, and they pour money into that particular areas. So community like Fowler have really been left behind for many decades.
I see. So what do you love most about the district that you're serving or representing, Fowler?
What I love is the diversity of cultures, traditions, cuisines, places of worships that we have here. We have mosques, we have churches, we have temples, we have various denominations of Christian churches here as well. From cuisines, we have Middle East, Iraq, Syria, Assyria, Chaldean. We've got sub-Saharan African, sub-Saharan desert of sub-Saharan, what do you call it, from Africa, uh, Congo, Ethiopia, Nigeria, you name it. And of course, the Southeast Asian community from Vietnamese to Cambodian, Laotian, Timorese, Filipino, Spanish, Serbian, Croatian, Russian Chinese, you name it. Like, we have it here in Fowler. And that's why I said no electorate I can imagine can compare to the electorate that I represent. And we live very much in harmony. And I try to maintain that cohesion by, attending all of the various cultural events that we hold or that the communities hold here. And listen to their stories and listen to what I can do as the federal representative to really take their voice and take their issues into the federal parliament. So it's also another part of Fowler is a very entrepreneurial community. A lot of young people here are very entrepreneurial in spirit. They're trying to test things out. A lot of them are trying to break away from parents' expectations of becoming a doctor or a lawyer, even though we've still quite a lot of them. Doctors, lawyers, accountants, pharmacists, dentists, optometrists, all those very, professions that are quite reputational, has a reputation within the migrant and refugee diaspora. So I think it's great to represent such a diverse community who I have walked in their shoes. I can say that I have walked in their shoes, arriving here with nothing, not knowing the English language and learning how to navigate our system, our Westminster system, our Australian public service system, and I have walked in their shoes. So therefore, I can relate to what they're going through now, especially for the new migrants, new arrivals. When they come to talk to me, I can empathize with them, and I don't pretend to know, but I do know to some extent what they're going through and what they're experiencing.
I see. So, what are some of the challenges that new migrants and refugees to Australia face that are different when you had to face it?
I say this at a few events that I've attended for those who are newly arrived. They're very lucky, maybe we can consider it lucky, that in the last decade or two, there have been an increase of government providing services to resettle refugees and migrants. We have many health services. We have many services to provide English classes. We have many services to provide to connect migrants, refugees with skills in order to upskills in order to get a job. Compared to when we first arrived, there was no such thing back in the 70s when my mother and us three girls arrived here. We had to really, in journalism, you either sink or you swim. And we were thrown into the water and we had to learn how to swim very quickly. For me, going to school meant that I had to learn English very quickly. So I grasped the English language through going to school. My mother, God rest her soul, she's passed away 2 years now. But when she first arrived, she didn't have all of those services that are now available for migrant families in order to connect them with jobs, for instance, or to teach them English, or to give them trauma counseling. None of that at all. As soon as she got here, being Catholics, the church helped us finding us a place to stay. My mother had to work in the kitchen, work cleaning houses to contribute to the subsidized rent. And I also, went to work with her, helped clean houses on the weekend. And whatever trauma she was going through, she obviously could never express it to any of us. And of course, looking back, of course, you know, people of my mother's generation do have trauma. But back in those days, in the 70s and the 80s and 90s, we didn't have the amount of services that we now have in Australia. Uh, there's every single migrant cultural center that you can name from the different groups that are available, from Vietnamese, Assyrian, Chinese, Serbian, Laotian, Croatian, all these clubs, all these organizations that are there to support that specific community. Whereas when we arrived, there was none of that specifically focused community groups. We were just Australian. We had to then make do with what we've been given and make do with what the environment we're in, and to really rebuild our lives as quickly as possible.
That's it. Tell me about your early years from Vietnam, if you can remember them.
Yeah, I mean, it was, from memory, it was a childhood that a lot of trees, climbing trees, spending time with my grandparents, my cousins, going to school, obviously living a life that was kind of ignorance of the war that was happening around us. Kids were not focused on that. I just remember a few times that we had to hide underneath our dining table because there was some sort of gunshot or some kind of bombing or something happening in a distance. So we had to try to hide. Other than that, it was a pretty normal life until it all kind of came to an abrupt end, not knowing that there was a war on. And so it was a pretty ordinary life.
Let's see. I should say that I'm very sorry about your mother's loss.
Thank you.
Yeah, she was a very remarkable woman.
Yeah, she was a very tough woman. People ask, when they talk about brave, how brave these Vietnamese refugees were, because they jump on a boat, escaped during the war, and did not know what was happening in the ocean, live or die, but they still jumped on a boat. And I think, is that bravery or stupidity? You didn't know what was going to go. You're going to kill yourself and your children, but you still went. And a kind of borders between stupidity and courage, I suppose.
Certainly, yes. What do you love most about Australia?
I mean, it's a land of opportunities. When we were first arrived here, we were told it was a land of opportunities. Growing up here, it was a beautiful country. It was clean. There were no wars. There were no crowd. It's not crowded. It's not overcrowded. I love the sunshine, that we get a lot here in Australia. Pretty green. And people were very, well, where I grew up in Ferromeadow and then later on in Cabramatta, people very accept you for who you are. Yes, there are a few, people ask me, have you experienced racism before? I said, yeah, I don't know. I just, people calling you me ching chong or whatever, slanty eyes. Is that racism? It didn't bother me. I didn't see it as such. I just thought people were just ignorant. I didn't get hurt by it. I didn't get offended by it. I was just so loving the fact that I have a new life, that I was able to rebuild a life in Australia, and that I did not have to run again. So to me, that that overshadowed everything else, the negative things that you experience, and that's what I love about it. It's it's beautiful. The people are beautiful. We have a great democratic system, even though there are some flaws. But if you travel around the other parts of the world, I think we are still in one of the best countries in the world.
Certainly. Yeah. Have you had a chance to return to Vietnam at any point?
Yeah, yeah, I return quite often. I love my birth country. I've still got a lot of relatives there. My grandmother, who was alive until last year, used to visit her every 2 years. My mum's younger sister is still there. My cousins are still there, so I have a lot of relatives in Vietnam. So I often go back.
I see. Yeah. You were born in Saigon, right? Which is now Ho Chi
Yes, I
Minh.
was born in what's now known as Ho Chi Minh, but yes, Saigon.
Mhm. Yeah. I was born in Hanoi. So
Ah, okay. Hanoi's beautiful,
yeah, it
but
is.
it's so tiny. It's crowded as well.
I know. I know. I've experienced that. I didn't have a chance to visit Ho Chi Minh City too often. So where would you recommend if I happen to be in town?
Oh my God, Ho Chi Minh or Saigon has changed so much. Every time I go back, something new is changed. Um, I, of course, I go to see my relatives in the country. It's about 2 hours, I think, southwest of Saigon. Um, and I go and stay in their village. But in the city, do what tourists do. We stay quite central so that we can walk around the St. Mary's Cathedral there, and there's that's quite well known. Um, and when I go there, I just check on friends who will take me to little cafes, new cafes opening up, and new eateries opening up. I used to go to uh, uh, Nhà hàng Ngon, which is in
Yeah.
I think it's Pascal.
Mhm.
Now it used to be really, you can see all the people bringing their good to sell, but now it's completely being a restaurant. It's just completely different, and I just like the old era whereby people actually brought in their little gun, their basket of things to make. It was so beautiful. Now it's different, but I still go there. But there's so many things in Saigon and Ho Chi Minh that you could do. Uh, Shopping centers have now really. You haven't visited Ho Chi Minh?
I briefly visited Ho Chi Minh City, but that was a long time
Yeah.
ago, so I didn't have too much memories of it.
Ah, right. So it has changed a lot. There are huge department stores there now, in the middle of the city, big high rises, um, and it has developed a lot, developed tremendously.
I see. Yeah, I remember visiting the presidential palace there.
Oh yes,
That
yep,
was a lovely
yep,
building.
yeah,
But yeah, I should
mm,
visit the Saint Mary's Cathedral, which we call the
yeah.
Dom.
Nhà thờ Đức Bà.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
I'm a Catholic, so I love to attend mass there.
Oh, oh yes. So it's last time it was under renovation, which is really great. So I don't know when I was there last. I don't think you can access it because they're renovating it.
Well, if there are any Australians, specifically those living in your district, listen to this, they can have some travel tips when they visit Vietnam, which is close to Australia, I believe.
Yeah, it is. It is. Vietnam's about 8 hours flight from Australia, and you're in Budapest. Did you say?
Yes, yes, I am currently.
So, currently, you live there or you work there?
Live here. I studied here, but I graduated already.
Right. Geez, strange to be in Budapest. I didn't know that there are Vietnamese in Budapest.
Yeah, there are actually plenty of them. So,
Really?
mhm.
Wow. Okay. Why is that?
I believe it has to do with the fact that Hungary used to be part of the socialist system, and there were Vietnamese who went here to study or work, and then they just never left.
Right. Okay. Never been to Hungary. I'm married to a German, so we go back to Germany, and I've been up to East Germany. and Berlin to see. There was a huge North Vietnamese community up there as well, because, the association with Hanoi to East Germany. A lot of North Vietnamese travel there and live there. So it was fascinating going to see the Vietnamese community up there a few years ago. But yeah, might have to go and visit Hungary one day when we go back to Europe.
Mhm. Yeah, as I've mentioned, Prime Minister Abbott spends much of his time here in Budapest. So, yeah, if you meet him,
Mm.
he can tell you some travel tips.
Ask him, absolutely.
Mhm. Right. So, tell me about the opportunities and challenges facing the Vietnamese community here in Australia.
Um, I think the opportunities are great because the young Australian Vietnamese who are born here have access to, obviously, education, to language. I've got quite a few Australian born Vietnamese working here with me, and I'm trying to empower them to have a say, be critical thinkers, and not just be subservient and agreeable, because that's how you're raised as a Vietnamese daughters in particular. You listen to your parents, you don't question your parents. So I'm trying to teach them to be more critical and to be more assertive. Um, and I think that there are a lot of opportunities here for our young Australian Vietnamese community. Um, there are challenges in terms of, for the older generation of my mother's era, there's a lot of pain still from uh, the war in Vietnam and the civil war, I would say, between, obviously, Vietnamese, North and South. I'm from Central, which is Hue, but, in Catholics, there was that whole push uh, away. The Catholics were pushed down towards the South in 1954. And so there's still a lot of that whole internal tension between North and South, I think, and in particular for the Vietnamese who left Vietnam, who escaped Vietnam, like my family, after the war, and a lot of them are still anti-Vietnam, they call it anti-communist. Um, it is a one-party system still, Vietnam, but I think for a country with about 100 million plus population, how do we encourage the conversation around democracy and equality of treating people, you know um, uh, everybody is equal. So I think some of the challenges is for both sides, I think, to come to some kind of reconciliation conversation, to see that we're actually one people. We might have different philosophy, we might have different ideology, but we should not hate carry so much hate because we speak the same mother tongue, the same language majority of the time. So that is a big challenge. And I just hope that through the younger generation, we could build a bridge between the Vietnamese living here and the Vietnam that we now know. Uh, in the meantime, young people are traveling back and forth anyway. Those young people whose parents escaped Vietnam, they're still traveling back and forth. Sorry, I just traveling back and forth for business, for studies, for friends. Uh, and so it's quite interesting to watch that the younger generations are doing that, whereas a small group of the older generation are still protesting about communism. So, those are the things that I think it'll take time. Time heals all wounds. But hopefully through my election, I will be able to have I have had conversations with the Vietnamese government. I've traveled there on a parliamentary delegation without being attacked here locally as a communist supporter. I used to be attacked as a communist supporter. Don't know why, even though I escaped, but that's some of the things that my enemies have thrown at me. But I love my birth country. I was born there. I despair for what has happened and the lives lost during the Vietnam War. But I am hopeful that Vietnam is a very energetic, young, entrepreneurial country, that eventually there will be a system that really encourage individuals to work, to contribute back, and that I hope that there'll be some kind of reconciliation, really, between Vietnamese Australians here and Vietnamese Vietnam.
Yes, I totally agree. Yeah, I know you've alluded to this somewhat, but what do you believe are the most significant differences between the first generation of Vietnamese immigrants or refugees to Australia and their native-born children?
A significant difference is obviously my mother. I mean, I'm a 1.5 generation. My mother's the generation that came here escaping the war in Vietnam, and they still hold a resentment towards communism, or what they were told were communism, and how communists destroyed lives. And my family relatives have fought both with the nationalists Vietnamese and with the Americans, which the French. So my family were also divided. Members were divided between the different ideologies from the West and the East. And so for the older generation, those who are still in that mindset will not see Vietnam as a progressive, open country. They will still see that as a country that they left behind in the 1970s, and they have not gone back, so therefore they don't see the change that has taken place. For the second generation, my son, he's half Vietnamese, half German, but he sees himself as an Australian. I'm an Australian of Vietnamese German heritage. He loves Vietnam. He goes back to Vietnam with me. He went there with his mates. And for the young Vietnamese here who were born of refugee parents, they go back there. They've got relatives there. They want to do business there. They want to travel and see that. So they haven't got that much of a conflict. They come back here and their parents will tell them all the things about communism. But of course, when they travel, they see different things. But, being respectful, they just let their parents or grandparents talk about it. And for the majority of them, I think just like water off a duck's back, and they just continue with their lives and live their lives and do what they have to do. But there is still a certain small proportion of Vietnamese Australians who are really believing everything their grandparents and parents have said, and will refuse to travel to Vietnam, and will be taking part in protests and all of that stuff here in Australia, which I don't know how that would impact their relationship and travel to Vietnam.
I see. So how has Australia changed since your first arrival?
Oh, God. Australia has changed tremendously since my first arrival. I mean, I arrived here just after the White Australia policy, predominantly white Australians still, Europeans like Italians, Greeks, Polish, Maltese, who came here after the Second World War. So these were the children of those post-Second World War migrants. So I was in an area whereby predominantly I was a minority. And as the years progress, it feels like the Asian, the migrants, the Middle Eastern, the newly arrived migrants and refugees seem to dominate, especially in Fowler, are bigger than compared to, say, the white Australian population. But then you go to other electorates, there's more predominantly white Australian population. But where I am now is predominantly migrants and refugees population, 70% born overseas, like I said before. And I feel that Australia today is, I feel that they're not as productive and as free as it was when we first came here. There are lots of restrictions on what you can say and what you can't say. There are a lot of restrictions around how to behave, and they're more, from my perspective, living back in those days, growing up then to now, is that people's freedom to be themselves has been limited due to how to say things correctly, how to not give a certain opinion because you might offend somebody. So we live in an era whereby everything has to be uh, kind of sanitized, and I just don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, really. Um, I spoke to a young person today. He's Brazilian and Brazilian born, came here when he was young. But it's amazing, you know. I'm in my 50s, he's in his 20s, but he has a similar mindset to me because he said when he came here, his parents um, went to work, had no uh, Centrelink, no support whatsoever, had to work hard to build their lives. And there's this perception that those who arrived newly in the last decade or so, there's support ready, you know, there's some sort of support ready for them. So that's I think there's more government involvement in people's lives today than it was back when we first arrived. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it seems to be that we're being watched more and we're being monitored more, and there's more tracking on us, and you know there's so many much more layers of bureaucracy than there was back then.
I see. So, what are some ways that you or any Australian can practically, challenge these restrictions that you mentioned?
How can we challenge it?
Yes, practically. What can any Australian do?
Oh, you know, and I think well, there are people challenging it, but then when you challenge it, you're called a certain particular, you're right wing, you're racist, you're inhumane. So um, there are people challenging it, but the system, I'm just starting to lose my voice now. But the system is such that um, people are now conditioned to um, um, they can just condition to do what they have to do just to make a living. I mean, I'm generalizing here, of course. The feeling here in my community is that a lot of them are just focusing on working, making a living to provide for their families, and whatever conditions and rules that the governments have put in place, they just will take it to some extent. Um, During the COVID period, when they put all these restrictions on us, myself and the local mayor stood up and said, you know, you can't put these restrictions on our local community that we can't travel without a permit. I mean, really? That only exists in a communist country where you need permit to travel. But we implemented that system during COVID for this particular area and some of the southwest areas where a lot of migrants live. And for the majority of them, they accepted that, but they resented it. But there are a few who spoke out about it, how we were treated and all that stuff. Um, you know, you became labelled as radical. So yeah, it's I mean, and I try through being an independent, I try to really educate my community about what's happening, and that's my role. If the government put out a particular policy, I question it, I ask the questions, I then give that to my community and share that, say, what do you think of this? Is what I think. So we have that kind of conversation in this electorate, I think. That's what I hope to achieve, and I think I've achieved some of that to some extent.
I see. That's good to hear, and I hope you continue to do so.
Yes, I will definitely continue to do so as long as I'm here.
I believe one of the very hot button topics in Australian politics and culture, at least from my perspective, is the conversation around the Aboriginal population and yeah, how to improve their lives and such. We recently have the Voice initiative, which was didn't go through.
Well,
So I wonder, as someone who's an immigrant and a refugee, how can you, in some ways, relate or sympathize with their story, the story of the Aboriginals?
um, look, I learned about it during my time as a journalist. I covered a lot of stories and about the stolen generation, the incarceration of Aboriginal kids. Um, I a project that I did many years ago. I went up to Kakadu to spend time with the Indigenous community up there to see how they live their lives. And I remember going through not Arnhem Land, one of those areas whereby you can't get through without the council permit. But we were given a council permit, drove through, and drove through past houses whereby the fridge was outside, the lounges were outside, all damaged, and and I thought, I said, what happened? They said, oh look, obviously, these are the things, and this was back in the early 2000s or 90s, not 2000, back in the 90s, late 90s. I remember the person in the truck said to me, well, they really don't sleep on mattresses. And so when you give them mattresses, they just, damage it and everything is outside the road. Of course, they had alcohol issue as well. And so a lot of their furniture were damaged as a result. So I wonder whether or not the West tried to modernize, westernize Aboriginal people, and because they couldn't live within that structure that we try to set up, or not we, but the West government try to set up, they retaliated and all that stuff. Um, and and so I question how can we be more effective in assisting and empowering the Indigenous community. And I think empowerment comes through education. Um, I think in the last, I don't know how many decades, but we spent about $150 billion um, into that sector, Aboriginal Torres Strait sector, giving money, but we still are not fixing the problem of high rates of incarceration, of low rate of of young Indigenous people going to university or schools, of health. We have to ask why that's the case. And I don't know if we have done the why it hasn't worked, because it feels like we just keep on throwing money. And I think white Australians are feeling guilty, so they think they're throwing money to get rid of their guilt, perhaps. I'm not a specialist in that area, but I think I'm speaking from just observation. So, I suppose I just got to also be careful how I tread in a space that is not my space, but as an observer. I just think that Australian government has spent so much money at the state, territories, and federal, and yet we still have, to this day in 2025, have not really been able to fix, if you can call it that problem. But is it our problem to fix? Is it something the government has to fix? Is it something that the community, the Indigenous community, have to really be empowered to look and explore? And can money really fix the whole feeling of the stolen generation? I don't think it can. So what can fix? What can fix people who have been through that traumatic experience? So, I think, it's a conversation you should have with somebody who's Indigenous. During the Voice campaign, for instance, when you ask people in my electorate, majority of migrants, who will say, well, why shouldn't there be Indigenous voice to have a voice? Why should, um, I don't want to vote on something that's not my issue. That's how they interpreted that. Or others have said, well, we've given them so much money. Why are we voting to give more money? That's how people interpreted it. So for a migrant community like here, again, they focus back on how they can build a better life for themselves and for their children. And their focus is mainly very much self-centered. And that's not to say it's terrible, but self-centered, that they've escaped war-torn countries. They come here, they want to rebuild their lives for their children, and that's what they want to focus on. Jobs, opportunities, rebuilding lives, getting a house, getting their children educated, and making sure that their children are not going to struggle like they did. So a thing like Indigenous issues is not really a priority for them either. So yeah.
I understand. So is there an Aboriginal population in Fowler?
I think it's about 1% or 0.1%.
Okay.
It's very small.
I see. Okay. So tell me about your entry into politics.
It was by accident. I campaigned on a car park in 2008, and then by sheer chance there was a by-election, and I thought, well, I wasn't part of any party. I put my hand up and I thought, who do I run for? And I thought, well, the Liberal Party, because it was under Malcolm Fraser, the former Prime Minister of Australia, who was Liberal, who opened the doors to Vietnamese refugees. And I thought liberation kind of aligned with me. And Labor was more like working Labor, Labor camps, more communist for me. So that's on the surface. That's how I kind of, made the decision. So I joined the Liberal Party to run for in a by-election here. And it was a safe Labor seat, Cabramatta. It was 30%, and I ran in that first election in 2008 and got a swing of 23%. It was the second largest by-election swing in the history of Federation, according to the papers at the time.
And you've been in politics since?
I've been in politics since. Yep.
So tell me about some of the challenges that you face running the last election, the one that you won this year.
The challenges was, first of all, they had a candidate who's got the exact surname as me. My name, even though it's long, Leti Zhang Dai, I shortened that to Dai Le, which means it's 5 letters on a poster. And they found somebody who's only got 4 letters. It's a biggie by 1 letter. She was young. A lot of people thought she looked like me. They thought, and then there was a rumor. They said that she's my sister, and then so this rumor spread, and so people would think, oh, Dai's sister running, we should support Dai sister and all that stuff. So the name, the candidate, and the second part was that the Labor Party spent over $1 million to invest a campaign against me. So it was hard to just think, well, you pray that in the last 3 years, the work that I've done, my office has done in engaging with my community would pay off. That's all I did. I pray for that. And we handed out, so really the only challenge was the fact that they spent money on me, and I didn't have that much money to spend. It was my own money again. And then in terms of that, the candidate who was Vietnamese, of course, that split the Vietnamese votes, which luckily I did not just target the Vietnamese votes. I had, like I said, I have Laotian, Timorese, Cambodian, Chinese here as well, Serbian, Croatian, Filipino, Italian, Greeks, Assyrian, Chaldean. So I've got those groups who backed me, which is how I think I won, even though the Vietnamese votes really swung towards this candidate. And they said that a vote for me would be voting out their Medicare. So the Vietnamese population believe that.
See. But well, you won nonetheless.
I won nonetheless. A swing towards me doubled my margin. Not a big, but it was still double when there was a swing of 12% towards Labour across the country, or 6 to 12%.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So finally, I'd like to end on this note. What are some of the issues within Australian politics and culture generally that you find that is not being addressed enough?
Politics is a very brutal game. And I said to one of the young person today, I said, you need to have thick skin. And that's what politics is about. And I think it goes far back as the time of the Roman Empire, you know, when you watch the sacrifice of, the gladiators going into the ring and fighting. To some extent, politics is similar to that. So you go into the ring and you fight. I don't know what issues you can address. I mean, I know that the issue initially over a decade ago when I first joined was the fact that it's lacked diversity. And both major parties did not have anybody of Asian candidate in the party. And when I joined the Liberal Party in 2008 and campaigned, I was the first, Vietnamese refugee to campaign with the Liberal Party in a very migrant-dominated seat as well. So the diversity from terms of culture, in terms of gender, in terms of lived experiences is what's lacking in federal parliament and state parliament. The Labor Party is better at it than the Liberal in terms of bringing in diversity in colours, in terms of cultural diversity. They have brought that in to give them credit. But the thing is, though, when you're part of a party, no matter how diverse a team is, you still think the same because you're in a party structure. You're in that box, so you have to think like in a square box. You can't think a diamond or a circle. So, I think that despite it's promoting it being a diverse party, it's still very much where it comes to policies, when it comes to ideas, it's still within a very box. So I think that has to change. And so that's an issue, is how do you bring the lived experiences of ordinary people into the parliament? Because then it's not just the people who are the privileged, who've got the resources, who've got the money to make a decision, but people who might not have the resources, might not have the money, might not have the education, who can also contribute to shaping our nation's policies. So I think that's just an issue, not just in Australia, but I'm sure politics overall, whereby it's people who've got the money, the networks, who get to make the decisions. Can we change it? I don't know. I feel that as somebody who's an independent of refugee background, I think I'm helping shifting that dial, but it's a very small little dial that I'm shifting. It's not a large one.
Yes, I think it's an issue that I think transcends party lines. I think all parties can help address this. I think on that note, thank you very much, Daile, for joining the program.
Thank you for having me, Chung, and let me know when it goes to air, and would love to share it.